Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's review day today and I'm heading back into SPFBO for my second review of this year's competition. Today I'm introducing you to Seekers, The Winds of Change by Troy Knowlton. So Seekers, The Winds of Change is my second review for SPFBO9 and it's one that I'm really pleased to have had in my allocation because I've been waiting to get to it for a long time. It's been sitting on my shelf for the best part of a year now and I just haven't found the right moment for it. Maybe I was waiting for this one. This is a young adult action adventure, although it's definitely one that adults can enjoy. After all, I'm an adult and I did quite enjoy it. We follow two key storylines and the main characters driving these are both Seekers, Tyrus and Oren. These two friends thwart an assassination attempt on their sovereign, and following this the sovereign sends them out on two very different but equally challenging and dangerous missions. Oren is sent to track down the assassin and find out who they're working for and why they want the sovereign dead, while Tyrus has to go to another country to seek out an ancient and powerful artifact known as the Conduit. So first of all, a couple of quick explanations. When I say sovereign, I'm not just using a synonym for ruler or monarch. The sovereigns are rulers, but they're much more than that, although we don't really get too far into what exactly that means in this opening book in the series. Tyrus and Oren work for the Sovereign of Wisdom, and he's described as being an 8-foot tall, armour-clad, owl-masked, pretty much demigod, and he's got brother and sister sovereigns as well, who we do get to see and hear a little bit about in this book. Then you've got the Seekers themselves, and these are essentially glorified treasure hunters. Their main job is to track down and retrieve various artifacts and put them into safekeeping in the Empire's archives. We don't really get too much of an explanation as to why this is and what most of these artifacts are, beyond the fact that the Seekers are doing this to stop these artifacts falling into the hands of those who would use them to cause harm. I think both of these elements are quite interesting and have good potential. I expect we'll see more about the Sovereigns in future instalments in the series, whereas in this opening book we do get to learn plenty about the Seekers. As relic hunters, you get to see them take on cunning adversaries, monsters, traps and much more. The opening scene and its desert setting that we revisit later on would look right at home in an Indiana Jones style movie, and we see plenty more scenes like this as the book progresses. One of the real strengths of this book is the character work, which I think was really well done. You've got two essentially best friends, but it's quite unusual to have that, I think, and to see them split up and spend most of the book apart. So instead of focusing on their already close relationship and how they interact with each other, you get to see them form new relationships with new characters instead, and I really appreciated that. I like the interaction you get within these two groups of characters, and for the most part it was all very natural, including when there were elements of romance involved. There's no insta-love here, it's more of a gradual, essentially enemies to lovers type of romance, and it's nice to see how that starts to play on character motivations without becoming a huge part of the story itself. The world building is also pretty good, although as I mentioned, I think it's going to start to really pay off in the second book of the series, where I expect to see more of the Sovereigns and to learn more about that side of the world. Here though, you do get to see a little bit of that, and you also get to see monsters and magical items which I think are well integrated into the story. You also get to learn about both the geography and the history of the world. I like how there are undercurrents of animosity between people from different nations, especially those who have fought against each other in the war. Again, there's a natural feel to how this is handled, although I think it is, in a couple of places, a hurdle that's just a little bit too easily jumped. The story overall is very well paced. It leans towards the faster part of the scale, which is definitely something that works for me. I like the two different story arcs that you have and how the chapters, for the most part, alternate between Tyrus and Oren, so you're never too far away from what's happening on the other side of the map. I also like how these two storylines were brought crashing together, and I'm excited to see the repercussions from these events and the revelations that were unveiled. Now, as with any book, there were also a couple of bits that I wasn't so much a fan of. Although I quite liked all of the characters, there were a couple that I didn't like the names of, or one particular family where you had the brothers Ares and Leo and then their sister Andromeda. This is just a personal thing, it's just one of those types of naming conventions that doesn't work for me on a personal level in the fantasy that I like to read. Now, this being a fantasy novel, there are also deaths and there are grievous injuries, but where a character might be treated for their wounds and might spend some time unconscious with their friends caring for them, once this is done, I feel like any injuries are very quickly forgotten. There seem to be no lasting effects so long as a character survives the initial battle. The main thing that bugged me though was the amount of thinking that our characters did. Although on the one hand it's a good way to literally get inside the head of your main character, on the other hand there was for me just far too much of it, and sometimes it just didn't seem very natural, which became even more of an issue for me. There were a couple of occasions where we would get Tyrus or Oren's thoughts mid-battle, for instance, and it just felt inconsistent with what was going on around them. They'd be there fighting for their lives, but thinking in complete sentences and with no apparent urgency, and not really seeming to focus on what they were actually doing. Outside of this though, I did find very little to complain about. If you're looking for a fun fantasy adventure with likeable characters and good accessible writing that you can just breeze through, I definitely recommend giving Seekers a try. Where this one has been out for a bit longer than some of the other books in SPFBO, plenty of people have already read it. If you're one of those, drop your comments down below. Let me and my viewers know what you thought of this book. I hope you enjoyed listening to my thoughts on this one though. I'll catch you in the next video sometime soon, but until then, as always, take care of yourselves, read some good books. Bye for now.